This right here is the KSO Show, your home for K-State coverage. Stay current on what's happening in the Wildcat world of sports. By the end, you might want to tell your friends about us. Or not. But hey, you should. Let's get it.
Love is in the air for sure on this edition of the KSO Show. It's Natalie Hall's dream of Valentine's Day edition of the KSO Show from the Tallgrass Tap House. We have a very good crowd here watching us, so I really appreciate. Some have come from as far as Kentucky, Topeka, of course. Keith, I don't know where you're from. KC, so a lot of traveling here. Well, that makes sense. So we've got a big panel today, too. I'm just going to walk down the line and introduce them a little bit. Running the board, you won't hear him as much because he's being very unselfish, but Grant Flanders is here. How you doing today, Flando? You happy to be back in Manhattan? That's good. You don't need to answer. No one cares. Yeah, move on to Fan. Really appreciate you being here again. How are you doing? How you doing today?
Very well. Very well.
That's good. Any fun Valentine's Day things you did other than this?
I took my wife out last night.
See?
So I was planning ahead.
Well, some people do, so I appreciate that. We'll go very briefly to Natalie Hall. How's your Valentine's Day going?
Couldn't be better.
All right, fair enough. Appreciate that. Over to Nelly. Maybe the second smartest basketball mind. Well, maybe the first. You're a fan. I don't know. Who else is in that group?
It's different categories.
That's the thing. It is different types of.
I mean, he's an X and O dude. So.
Right. And you're, numbers. If you guys had a staff together.
X and O's like love.
You can't top that. So let's go down to Mason. Mason Voth, who's been in a long-term relationship now, correctly? Long-term?
Yeah, if by long-term you mean probably about 2.5, 3 weeks. Yeah, there you go.
That's a long time. If you missed the national hour of the game today, we explained this all, and his better half will always be referred to as Bud Selig. That is the code word for her. So if you're reference Bud Selig, that is why. Last but not least, the best Grant we have at the table today.
That's cold.
Grant, in my phone it says Grant KSU, actually.
I like
what
that.
It says. I know the last. Do you want to put the last name or just say Grant from the Bosco Boys?
I'm fine with Grant KSU.
Okay, yeah. Because, that's the thing. If I call fan, because you got a bit of a gimmick or a bit of a brand you're playing.
Sure.
We'll pull down that wall and call you by your real name, and it's just a guy.
Yeah.
We all, that's not a big deal. So let's get into this. We got a lot of questions today given to us for the show on K-Man. Not K-Ma'am, not to be confused with K-Ma'am, which is something that Mason and I will be starting relatively soon. We have a lot of questions from there. I'm going to pull them up. I'm going to run through them. Before this ends, we'll make sure we get at least through an Iowa State preview. If somehow I don't get enough questions about Texas and Baylor, we'll cover those games as well because they were a lot of fun to be at. And I want to get a lot of perceptions from other people other than Flando because that's all I've talked to for the last few days. It would be really, really helpful. And I'm stalling because my phone won't pull up the internet right now. So Let's start with something else then. As I try to get that to work, let's just talk about the last two games K-State played, and I'll let you guys do a little bit of a. I like to put you guys in a tough spot. We have to pick what you're going to talk about. I'll have open-ended questions, so I'm just going to ask it this way. Start with Fan. Which win taught you more about K-State, the Baylor win or the Texas win?
I would say the Texas win because winning with offense is not something we've seen this team do a lot, where they had to rely on making shots. And so they had to do that really the first half. Second half, of course, they locked down. So a game where they made shots at a high rate, I think it was, 47% for three, something like that. And you do that, you win a game a way that you might have to win a game in the tournament. So looking forward, you're probably going to have a game where someone's going to score at a high rate against you, and you've got to match it, and that's a good indicator that K-State can do that this year.
That'd be my answer too. So, but I would ask you guys all the same question. If you're all going to say Texas for the same reasons, just give me a pass or a nod, or tell me something different about those games that meant something to you. So, Nelson, which game taught you more about K-State, the win at Baylor or the win at Texas?
I overall would agree on Texas, but my argument for Baylor would be that, Baylor came out and tried to beat the living daylights out of us. They were very physical with us, and at times, especially the past 3 years, this team hasn't responded to that, and they did, and they found a way. They grinded it out, and they came off the emotional win against KU and went down to Baylor and easily down 7 second half could have said this isn't our day, but instead they crawled back into it and closed it out.
I'm going to ask a different question to Mason because you're great at seeing the different view anyway. Were you going to say Baylor?
I
knew you would. Thank you. So
But I was going to give you a decent reason for it.
Yeah.
So
Mine wasn't decent?
No, yours was great, Nelly. But I was going to say Baylor just because we've seen, and not just a Bruce Weber team or this team in particular, but K-State teams in the past come off a big win against a team like KU and not be able to go and take care of business in the next game. So I thought it was big of them against Baylor because it was another game against a team that kind of had some adversity going against them. Baylor had lost the game already that week, and they were having to get back into the swing of things. And then on top of that, it was K-State going out there and I think having the mindset that they realized we are the best team in the Big 12 right now, and we're supposed to come down here, take care of business, and beat them. And so that's exactly what they did. And then that's just what they did again Tuesday night against Texas. They knew that they could do it already because they had done it against Baylor.
Mason, smartest guy in the panel. We got basketball players, we got
Very
smart
good,
guys,
Mason.
we got everything.
I can
Grant,
combine the two here.
Yeah, you can. I'm not going to come to you last every time, so don't feel like you're always going to be stuck
No worries.
last following these guys with their great answers. What do you got on this question? What do you got?
I'd say I'd learned something from both games. I mean, since I'm last, I'm just going to I'll mix it up a little bit. Both games we were trailing, I think, probably midway through the second half. So I kind of feel like we learned that this team can be trailing and have things going against them and still bounce back and have the poise to stay on their track and get the dub. I mean, I wanted to say what
dub?
No. I wanted to say what Nelly said because we got bullied. We learned in Baylor just how tough this team truly is because we got bullied for 40 minutes by guys that were so much bigger than we are, and honestly both Texas and Baylor seem just massive compared to our guys, but we learned from both games, honestly.
So well said. Shouldn't have gone to you last, but I did. So here's the deal again. We've got about 60 or so questions. There's 5 of you dudes, Nats. We got lots of people here. I'm not going to ask everybody to answer all of them, or else we'll be here for 11 hours, and I don't think anybody wants that. But I will say this, a little caveat. If I ask Fan a question and he gives an answer he thinks just terrible, and I don't come to you, rip the mic out of somebody's hands and say, no, I want to tell him he's wrong. So, but I just like to have arguments about buying in and not buying in and that kind of thing. That's an inside joke for us. So, I am going to start with Fan on this one. PowerCat 1990. He has a few questions. I'm going to kind of ask you just one of them. You've probably got it in front of you too, but he's assuming X is coming back, which I agree with. I think X will come back. What do you think the basketball roster needs the most next year? Do you think it's grad transfers? I guess that's his question. What's the biggest hole in the roster that you see next year?
Well, experience at the guard spot would be the biggest one. I mean, if you could find a combo guard that can distribute the ball a little bit, would be a nice guy to bring in. I think if X returns, you've got Mac. I think you've got a pretty good pair in Cardi and Mike. And then I think Neil Williams is going to be a good player. So I think you've got some pieces there. It might seem like there's a logjam at the guard spot, but I think a combo guard that can distribute the ball and score a little bit would be a nice piece to add to this team coming back next year.
I think you're probably pretty smart because I think that's what they're looking at too. I mean, if you kind of really dig into it, and they're not publicizing it a lot, and we're not either, to be quite honest, but they are still recruiting for next year despite not having a scholarship. And those are the kind of guys they're looking at. 6'4", 6'5", combo guards who might be, he's correct. I'm going to go to Grant on this one. Got a couple questions for you from Pratt Cat. And because you're the man who's been on Twitter talking, win them all, win whatever, that kind of stuff. So you're the guy to answer this question. Can the basketball team continue this streak? Which game or games do you see as the biggest challenge?
Can we continue the streak? Well, what have we won, 9 straight?
Correct. Beat every team in the league in a row.
I mean, it's certainly possible, especially with what we've learned in the last couple of games. We can go on the road. We can be down late in the game, and we can still win. Even, with a flu bug, with guys that have just gone out, Cardi, that's a big blow to the team, and that can affect mentality of players, especially, young college players. But, I mean, it's going to be tough. To win, what would that be? We have 7 games left, so I'd be winning 16 straight. That's pretty crazy. I'm not sure if that's ever happened in the history of the Big 12. Is it possible? Absolutely. When you look at the remaining schedule, it's tough for K-State, but, we had a nice heated argument before this that there aren't teams.
We just saw things differently, that's all.
We saw things differently, but it's possible. I don't know if it's necessarily plausible, but obviously going into Allen Fieldhouse is going to be very difficult. It's
Absolutely.
Probably, I think it's the toughest place to play in the country. by far. I mean, I really do. They have a remarkable record there, but this KU team is not the KU teams of the past. So they're certainly beatable. We beat them before, and they just don't have the depth that they've had before, and they don't have that senior leadership that they've had before, especially at the guard position. But probably road games are just the toughest, and I think that TCU game is going to be a really tricky one.
Yeah.
But hashtag win them all. I think we're going to do it.
Well, there you go. So
16 in a row,
great
baby.
Answer, but they're winning 16
It would
straight.
match 2002 KU, by the way.
They did win 16 straight?
14 straight.
Oh. Well, K-State would win 16 straight, though, right? If they won
Light
out?
work.
Yeah.
If they won out?
Well, I was counting the Big 12 tournament, so 14 regular season, yes.
Oh, okay. Well, the last question I think has got to be one probably for me to answer. It just asks if the access to the football team is a good change from the previous regime. And yeah, it sure is. I'm not going to sit here and bash the previous regime. I have no interest in doing that. They did a lot of nice things for us. But, yeah, it's significantly better. And it's better for the fans. I mean, that's what really matters is the fans have had a strong desire to learn more about this team and know these kids. And it helped basketball so much the last couple of years. There's a lot. We'll get to it, I'm sure, down in the questions. But there's a lot of anti-Bruce Weber sentiment for a long time. I think winning helped that, but part of what helped it, too, was the social media campaign they really launched about that program, and I think it'll help football, too. Next one's from Matt Hall. That's not a question, so we're going to go on a little bit here. And I'm going to go to Nelson on this one. So get Nelly on mic here. So this says, he thought it was an excellent move by Bruce to go zone at Texas. It not only got the Horns out of their mojo, but it helped slow down the ball movement, which, as odd as it sounds, seemed to help shorten our rotation, allowing our guys to rest a little bit. Do you think this was a dress rehearsal? Do you think this was a dress rehearsal for Iowa State, who isn't afraid to just jack up threes from three-point range? We'll see. Will we see zone again Saturday? So I guess, Nelson, just talk about the zone at Texas, what you thought it did, and do you think you'll see more of it?
For the most part, I think the biggest thing it did is just change Texas's rhythm. And that's why, as a coach, I'm always a fan of having a secondary defense to go to, if for nothing else, just to change a team's rhythm and change the pace of a game, which that did. I would be surprised if we saw it Saturday, but we did see it last year at Iowa State, and it did just that. It took Iowa State out of their rhythm for a couple of minutes and got us back in the game. So if we get in a situation where Iowa State gets on a little run, I sure hope Bruce isn't afraid to go to the zone, but I expect us to play pretty good man defense and not have to do that.
Well said. Mason, I'm not dodging you. I'm just trying to give questions to people I think in their wheelhouse. So I'm going.
That's okay.
So I'm going back to fan on this one. This is from Shu. How tough and consistent do you have to be in order to win 9 straight Big 12 games? And then since I know you already know it, what's the history of similar streaks in the league? And he says outside of KU, but I'd love to hear whatever you got. So how tough did it be to win 9 in a row? And then how many other teams have done something like this in the Big 12?
Well, I believe the last team to do 9 was KU.
Mm-hmm.
The last non-KU team, I'm not sure a non-KU team has done it in the league that I've researched, that I've heard about.
Man, I heard this on YouTube.
So I think they were talking about it, but there may have been one other team do it. But
The only one that I
remember.
wonder about, without even looking at, is like any of those like Oklahoma teams.
They
that
were-
in the Final Four.
Didn't Texas start out like 11-0 that one year when they ended
13.
up sharing it with KU?
So Texas started out 13-0. Oklahoma started out 11-0. They talked about it on 810 recently. Basically, the last team to win or to have a streak like that won the league by 2 games, essentially, except for Oklahoma and Texas, which both started out 11-0 or 13-0. You think back to those seasons, that was one of them, I think, was the Blake Griffin season, and he got injured, and then things kind of fell apart. And then, obviously Texas did not win the league. They think they lost by 2, but so there you go.
Well said. Wealth of knowledge around this table.
Oklahoma was 2009. As far as the first part of your question, obviously you have to be tough to beat every team in the league. So you're facing 9 different styles, 9 different types of teams, from Texas Tech, who's got the best defense, to Baylor, who had the best offense. Texas had the second best offense. So finding ways to win that many different types of games, I mean, that's really what made the streak more extraordinary to me, is that they beat all 9 other teams in the league. And obviously you don't always play well, and they still found ways to win a couple games where they didn't play as well. So doing that for 9 games in a row is really, really hard to do, and obviously not many teams have done it.
Yeah, I was going to say that. One of my greatest compliments for Bill Belichick and the Patriots is they can morph their team to be whatever they need to be on that Sunday to win. And this team is starting to do that. And we've seen that the past couple of games.
Don't see Anthony Lynn doing that.
That seems unnecessary. And I feel like, did they give out Coach of the Year yet in the NFL? Have they announced that?
Yes.
Did he win it?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just saying national hour right now for KSO.
No idea. All right.
Probably not.
Right now.
Probably
Anywho,
Andy Reid.
I'm totally lost. I'm gonna skip a couple. A lot of these questions Kurt's answered today. I know there's two different things, but these questions John asked, and I'm stealing his questions anyway. So if we've covered, I'm gonna go past them. Another question from Scott Wildcat. You know him about the zone. Nelson already hammered that, so I'm gonna give his second part of the question to Mason because you seem like a hip young guy to me. Would that be a fair description?
Probably not.
Okay. He says, have you seen the Nike alternate uniforms a lot of teams have that just feature the school's logo instead of wording? So you've seen like the M from Michigan or whatever. Do you like
Michigan doesn't have any.
What? They don't have any uniforms like that?
No. Michigan State has had some.
Well,
Kentucky has some. Oklahoma State. Clemson wore some ugly ones last night.
Okay, that's what it's based off, was the Clemson one. So do you in general like those or not like them?
I like them for some teams. I even think Junction City, I think you guys wore them against Manhattan last week.
We do.
And Junction Cities look good. The ones Clemson
Are you
wore.
saying that because he's sitting right there?
No, I thought they looked good. I was impressed when I saw them. But the ones Clemson wore the other night, they weren't good just because the colors were kind of odd. It was like a really dark gray and then just straight orange for the numbers. So I didn't really like that. But for the most part, I think a lot of teams can pull it off. Just some teams can't do it, and you got to get the color scheme right.
Okay, that's a perfect answer. I had a thought it's out of order now, but when you guys were talking about, you said something about K-State winning games on the road, and you talked about being different teams. He talked about it. And the thing is, too, we've already said this, if you think about it. Go back to the Iowa State game. They're down 7 with like 3 minutes left in the Iowa State game. So it's not just the Baylor and the Texas games where they had relatively significant margins on the road they overcame. They did it at Iowa State, too, late. So this one we talked about on the show, Kurtz's show on K-Man, but I'm going to ask you guys this anyway because I liked the question. But I want you just to give me one-word answers. I'm not asking for explanations because I don't want to take 8 hours. It was 11 the last time I made that reference. Over or under 4.5 seasons that Bruce Weber's K-State's coach? We're going to go just down the line. We're going to start with Grant over here, and then Mason and Nelson, and on down the line. Nats is going to answer this question too. Over or under 4.5 seasons Bruce Weber coaching at K-State?
Under.
I'm going over.
Under.
Oh, I'm actually up under.
Under.
I'll say over.
So we had two overs here. Is that right? Raise your hand if you went over. So 2, 3. You're
Just-
a waiter.
Just two.
No, we got an under over here. Yeah, there's like 4.5. Are you guys? Yeah,
Kick ass and retire.
yeah, you guys crazy. 4.5 years. He's 62. You think in 5 years?
After the national championship this year, he might just call it a quits.
That's what I think. Robin Kentucky thinks under 2, and I agree with him. But it's okay. We'll move on. I said we're just going to say it. Now I'm arguing with you guys. Look at that. What a hypocrite. Let's see here. I'm reading about... That's not a question. That's not a question.
Hip and hypocrite.
I put the hip in hypocrite. You stole that from me because we were going by the WinStar Casino on the way back. And we never stop at casinos. Never. We never do. And I said, they put the win in WinStar. And that was my slogan for them, and it didn't work to tell them guys to stop. I've had 2 good slogans. That one and my FCS slogan. Did I tell you guys that one when we were in Frisco? The FCS, less is more. Fewer scholarships. It's just funny. All right, we're going to go on here a little bit. A lot of not questions in here. A lot of comments, which makes it really hard. All right, Black Emaw. We're going to read some of his. Let's start with Flando. Flando, can I get you to answer a question? Because this is not a serious question, so I'm bringing you in for a fun one. Are you okay?
I'm perfect.
You look great. Okay. All right. Next year,
Thank you.
When you raise all these banners for the Big 12 and national championship, do we just retire Bear Brown's jersey at the same time?
I mean, they're not gonna, but I would do it. Yeah.
There you go. That's what I'm looking for. That's perfect. For anybody who wants to pipe up and answer this question,
Pipe down.
or that, are there any teams outside the Big 12 any of you follow? Or we know Flanders is Michigan State. Does anybody have another team that we don't talk about much that you follow a lot? Louisville for you. Anybody else in the crowd have another, like a second team? I don't either. Like, I watch games, but there's no team that I watch to be like, I want them to win or I care about, you know.
Red really likes Zion.
Our son really likes Zion Williamson and Duke. So bandwagon.
Same body type.
For sure. Same body type. Red and Zion. Same thing. So another one here. This is, I'm going to decide who I come to after I read about this. I live in Big Ten country. That's not that good. We've talked about that one. Here we go. First team all Big 12. Okay, I'm going to throw out the team we gave today, and you tell me if you disagree with it. We'll make it that simple. And now, and the rule we'll put for this question is it's as today. You're not projecting it. You're not saying I'm not putting Mariel Shayok on there because I think they're going to lose. Whatever. You're projecting right now. The 5 we gave today and agreed to on the game were Shayok, Brown, Culver, Lawson, and Mackay Mason. And this is for right now. Is there anybody else you would say, take that guy off and throw that guy on? And if you don't, we'll just move on to the next question. Anybody got any argument? No. Everyone likes it. I love it.
No, they're all Big 12 pretty spot on.
Right there. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. This is one we answered on the show, but we were very fast about it. And I'll take this one real quick. Willie, 2007, asks for key targets for 2020. The 3 I said on the show, and I think there's more worth watching. The number 1 for me would be Luke Kasubke. He is a Rivals 150 kid. He's listed at 6'4", but he and his father tell me he's more like 6'6" or 6'7". He does look tall on tape. It's funny, they go back and forth and change his height in Rivals, and it's a big argument, so it's a big deal. But he's got good size. He's a really good shooter. He's a better athlete than you'd project, by being stereotypical and looking at him and doing that whole thing. K-State loves him. They see him as a high-level recruit, and K-State's in his top 2. There's a Kobe Clark. He's really listed as small forward, but he's a point guard for Vashon, which is Cameron Fletcher, Marvin McKinney, that same school. They really like him because of his length and his ball handling skills. I think they probably see some similarities to a Wondu in that kid and really like him. And then Ben Carlson, who, kind of a stretch 4 in the Dean Wade mold. That's a lazy comparison, but it's a pretty good one. Out of Minnesota. His sister plays on the volleyball team. There's more, but I think if you're looking for 3, and they technically only right now, you can always over-recruit. They might sign 5 kids. I don't know. Right now they're going to have 3 spots. Those would probably be the 3 that they would really, really attack. I keep looking at you guys for confirmation, and I realize I'm not answering your question. Like I'm answering one from the board, so I'll just go ahead and go on. I appreciate that. That's a KSU fan. We're not going to ask that question at all. I'm going to ask Fan to do this because he's the only one that I trust to do this, and you guys are going to know why in a second. It's not a question from Jay Compton 10, but ease his nerves and convince him that they win the Big 12 outright this year.
Well, I see us at worst losing 2 games the rest of the way. I think 5-2 in our last 7 is probably most likely what we'll do. I'm not saying we will do that, but I'd say that's probably what the numbers would say, and I'd say that's what my gut would say as well if I was going that way. I do think the other teams are going to lose at least 1 more, and namely the 2 biggest ones I think we win Saturday, so that kind of drops
Takes
Iowa State
out, kind of, yeah.
And then I'm not necessarily saying we will be the one that beats KU, but I think they lose another one, at least 1 more, and then I think Texas Tech loses at least 1 more with the schedule they have. So if those teams all lose 1 more and we only lose 2, that gives us the cushion we need to go outright. So I would say we've got what it takes to do that, and I think those teams have shown that they're flawed enough that they're going to lose at least 1 game the rest of the way. So that would be my rationale.
Very well measured. Very well done. PowerCat 1990 again. I don't know who I want to ask this. I'll answer the first part, and then I'm just going to throw it open to open conversation because I don't know the answer to it. The first question that he asks here says, do you think the new transfer rules will change how K-State looks at recruiting? The answer is no. I assume this means, I don't know if it means basketball because it's all about basketball. I'm assuming basketball. Like, I know K-State stands on grad transfers. Like, they'll take them, but they need to feel great about the situation. Like, they really don't want to do it. They would really rather invest in the kids that they've, put in their program and put time into. If a kid can't cut it, they're not going to keep him. We saw it last year, and you'll see it again this year. But they're not going to over-recruit necessarily over a guy like – they're not going to go look for a guy to over-recruit over Cartier Jada for next year. They're not going to do that kind of thing. They want to invest in their own talent, their own roster. But if they can get a grad transfer to come help them at a spot where they need help, they'll do it. And then the other question from him, I just want to see if he has any thoughts on this. Do you think in a broader sense, does it change how recruits look at schools with opportunities? So whether this is football or basketball, do you think the idea of being able to more or less in either sport, especially, transfer almost without penalty kind of wherever you want, do you think that changed how recruits look at schools or how they value the process or no?
The process of once they're a grad transfer or at the very beginning, like when they're in high school?
No, I don't know. The question is this in a broader sense, how recruits look at schools and opportunities.
Because I think if you see them in high school, going out of high school, they say, I'm willing to take a few more risks, or if there's somebody that really sticks out to me, say K-State is somebody that really sticks out to somebody, whether it's basketball or football. And then on the other side of things, though, it's a team like Duke in basketball or Alabama in football. And they're like, I want to be at the top order on their totem pole to start things. So maybe I'll think about K-State. They stuck out to me. I'll go with them. But they think, but you know what? 2 years later, Alabama or Duke, they'd love to have me. I can just jump ship, go to them, and continue my career with success.
I don't have a better one. I mean, that's really, really good. I guess I don't think, it makes a significant change. It may make them more quick to make a change, but I think the recruiting process itself probably not significantly different.
Yeah, I would say for most kids, when they decide to go to K-State or wherever, they're not thinking in the back of their mind, oh, I'm going to want to leave there in 2 years. I'm sure they plan on being there for 4 years or however long when they go there. But
let's keep going down. Oh, I see a thing that says Zion Lover. I don't know who that's talking to. I want to ask Nelson this one. Jeff R7885.
Found Red's account.
That's pretty good. About the spring football game, Nelly. You ready for some spring football questions?
I am.
I think you can handle this. I know you have to guess. You probably don't know the answer to this, but you're a smart man. To what extent will we see the 2019 offense and defense installed and demonstrated during the spring game? What kind of things should fans be watching for in terms of pre-snap alignments and post-snap? So what do you expect? By the spring, how much of the offense, defense will be involved? What would you look for if you're trying to learn about them in the spring game?
I mean, I think all of their basic packages will be in. I would sure hope that's their goal. So I think we'll see a lot of their same blocking schemes that we saw at North Dakota State, a lot of the pulling of the guards and those things, the power, the jet motion, jet sweeps, and then the play action pass, a little bit of quarterback run game. So yeah, certainly no coach wants to show their entire playbook in a spring game, but all of the basic package I'm sure we'll see.
Very nice. Mac 1020. I'm going to go to Grant for this one. It's a basketball question. I just wanted to get you off your phone and not let you text is the problem being a mean guy. With Cardi out, do you think Bruce will rotate a bit more off the bench if K-State can get a comfortable lead? He'd love to see some more guys on the bench get more time, like S.N. Dub, Austin Trice, maybe some bigs. Feel like we need some help down the stretch and into the Big 12 tourney and dance. So again, the question is assuming that K-State's have some blowouts and comfortable leads. Do you think maybe Bruce goes to the bench a little more in those games and tries to get another guy or two ready for the stretch run?
Yes, I do think that.
Okay.
I mean, we saw it at Oklahoma State. I don't know how much time was left in the game, but we were up by
they threw them all in
nearly
there, yeah.
40 points at some point, it seemed like. And
34, they went like a 19-3 run, and K-State was still up like 20.
Right, we put in, everyone that we possibly could to get, and there was a decent amount of time left, and they cut the lead, obviously, not enough, but yeah, and he absolutely should do that. That's valuable time for guys like Sean Williams, Levi Stockard, guys that need experience and are going to need that in the future. But I'll be more interested to see what the rotation looks like in close games because
right,
like at Texas, the core group really carried that game.
They played 91 of the 100 minutes of the second half.
We didn't get a whole lot from our bench at all, and I don't know if that's something that you can really rely on as the season gets older, because depth is what wins games a lot of the time, just in terms of energy. So I'll be interested to see. Of course, any coach is going to put in the bench guys when he has a comfortable lead.
Right.
That seems like an obvious answer, but I'll be interested to see just what the rotation looks like when games are closer.
You're curious where that cutoff line is, like how many points they have to be up by to where he says, all right, let's get.
I would love to have Sean Williams get more experience because, we're losing a massive contribution at the guard spot next year, and he's going to be a sophomore. And frankly, we're going to have, quote, upperclassmen next year at the guard position with Cardi and McGurl, but how much have they really played? They're not going to be playing like juniors for a while. So let's just hope these last, 10 games or so with the tournament that we're just blowing everyone out.
You're going to, like you said, you're going to win them all and play. You got a lot of games left.
So we're going to win them all.
How many regular season games are left right now? Like 7?
7.
Then 3 in the Big 12 tournaments, 10, 6 in NCAA to win the championship.
Easy.
So 16 more games left. There's
16
lots
more
of
games. We're going to get a lot of minutes for our bench.
Right? 16 games left?
Yeah.
National title?
Easy.
I'm going to ask Nats this question, Nats, and it's a bit of a I don't want to say trick question, but here's the deal. I want you to answer it for me and tell what you thought of me in this scenario. And you'll get it as I read it to you, okay? Just follow along with me. This is a long one. This is from Never, I think it means Never 2, and we got a guess on that. Never LL, Never II. I'm guessing it says Never 2, which maybe it's a reference to Michael Bishop's wristband. If you remember that, he wore a Never 2 wristband against Nebraska in '98. So if it is, I hope I'm right. So I'm going to read this. Says, let's go back in time to the 15-16 season. Frank Martin has South Carolina trending up. The Gamecocks finished the regular season 24-8, but unfriendly metrics kicked them to the NIT instead of the NCAA. They would go to the Final Four next season. Brad Underwood goes a perfect 18-0 to win the Southland regular season and conference tournament titles. Stephen F. Austin smokes West Virginia in the opening round. We wore shirts for that. That's not why I'm asking you this, though. We made fake Stephen F. Austin shirts. We just took purple shirts from inside out and put SFA and white tape on them. Let's see. And they have a great year. That's the point of that. Then there's Bruce. So this is the same year. A horribly disappointing 14-15 season the year before, which major personnel issues leads to a litany of transfers and dismissals prior to the start of the season. The Bruce Cats go 5-13 in conference play and finish 17-16 overall. The Cats are left out of postseason for a second straight year. This is Bruce's fourth year in Manhattan. The only Franco holdover left is Brian Rolliter, who does not play. The on-court product is all Bruce. At this point, how long were you expecting Bruce to remain at K-State? Fast forward to the present. How shocked are you that Bruce not only turned it around, but actually has this team in a position to win a conference championship outright? So Nats, you listen to all that, and I can tell them the answer, but they think I'm just being a homer. Like, how did I feel about him at that point?
You wanted to give him more time, and you believed that he, with a few more years, was able to turn it around?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I just didn't want to say it because if I say it, of course you're going to say you believed. So I wanted Nats to answer, who just saw me, and that's exactly how I felt. I was probably the only person in America who thought Bruce Weber was a good hire for K-State. I loved him after year one, and I thought he was the right guy. I would not have fired him. I said it to her a million times, and I am not surprised one bit at where K-State is. So that's why I get so passionate about this, because this is where I think Bruce Weber should have this program. In all sincerity, I think this is who he is. And so that's my answer to that question. With anybody else, was there anybody else? And you can be honest or not honest, what you want to do. Fan, did you believe they were going to get good again?
No.
Yeah,
And I was all aboard the Underwood train at that point in time.
That's good honesty. Did anybody else think Bruce was
I
going
can't
to
lie
get this
about
back?
that.
I'm not doing this to say I was right. I'm just saying, like, I think I was alone in this.
I don't know that I ever thought that they would get to this point again under Bruce Weber. I thought he wanted his first year. They're not going to get back to that point, because I remember I went to the Georgia and the Texas State games that year, and I just remember thinking, man, this team is shot. And then the next year, I figured, you know what, he's got a couple of freshmen in here. You give him his time with them, but they're not going to do anything special for him to keep his job much longer. But he did a lot of things. He's turned this thing around, and now he seems like the right guy.
And the crazy thing is, I think for all of us, that Oklahoma game.
I was going to say, you remember the moment that I changed my mind for a second, though.
Yep. These guys' freshman year, when we lost by 100, wasn't quite 100, but close.
It felt like it.
That was, I think, a low point for all of us, and when we all had serious doubts. But that year probably should have been the year that we realized, hey, this team can turn around, because those kids did rebound from that game, and we did make the tournament. So. Yeah, those kids showed even back then that they had some resiliency in them.
That was 2 years ago. That was their sophomore year.
Yeah. So,
I got off the wagon again at that point. Then I was back on.
And I will say that was my personal weak moment. And I was with Nelson watching that game, and I was somebody who would tell, I didn't care how anti-Bruce my friends were, and I wasn't in the media. I was just a guy, and I would defend him all the time. I'd say, nope, he's gonna be fine, and I'd go through my reasons why and that kind of stuff. But that was the game. I remember saying, I think they're right. It may not work out. And that was the moment that I got, weak on Bruce. But then, like Nelson said, that's when they turned it all around. Like, they lost by 100 at OU, and then they basically, had to almost win out to make the tournament, and they did. Then they won their playoff game, or their play-in game, in the NCAA tournament, and they lost in the opening round or whatever. But yeah, that will say that was the one moment I was like, oh, I don't know. That OU game was rough.
Would you say in that moment that you were not bought in?
I would. I would. Yeah, because being bought in means you can never be talked out of it.
That's right. I
Right.
guess.
And so in that moment,
That's your definition
I was not
of bought in. That's your
Correct.
definition.
Correct.
I would have. I mean, man, that was tough. That was a tough day.
Oh,
Absolutely. But,
was.
Hey, we've had Bruce on our show, and we told him to his face that we didn't believe in him. So
yeah.
frankly,
Which was awesome because I got heated again though. But some people wouldn't do that. Wouldn't tell him like, hey, we called.
well,
for your
we were
head
gracious.
too,
They were gracious enough to let us sit down and talk with them. So
still good. It was still good of you, in my opinion. Who do I want to ask? Flando, get over here, buddy. Hey, Nats, you nailed that too. I was hoping you wouldn't say I don't know, or you didn't like him. Because I remember me and Nats always like, oh, I think he's okay. But how you doing over there, Flando? The level's good.
The levels are great.
Why do you sound way louder than everybody else?
What's that?
Why do you sound way louder than everybody else?
I mean, because I didn't have myself lined up there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a problem. But what do you got for me? Huh?
This is from Neilio.
Okay.
And I think you're going to know the answer to this.
Okay.
Do you see the crowd straight up bringing the intensity this Saturday? In his opinion, this should be treated like a KU game at Bramlage.
Yep.
Can you answer?
Will this be like a KU game at Bramlage?
I'll read it to you again. Yeah. Do you think the crowd's going to straight up bring it Saturday?
Yes, they will. I mean, the fact that there's only assortment of tickets left, that you can only buy single tickets now.
The guy behind you came here from Kentucky to go to the game.
That's right. You want to get on this, Rob? You want to?
It's gonna be so loud.
Get him on. Yeah.
It'd be like 89 again. It's gonna be so loud.
89, man. That was the first year of Bramlage, right? You know?
If only we were in a hurry.
It's going to be like February 5th. It's going to be so loud.
The only thing I am worried about is the weather. Hopefully the weather doesn't.
Don't give him that excuse. No, don't even give that
It's
to
flurries, man. Come on.
It's no
Come on.
Don't with your babies. Let's go.
Yeah.
100% chance of heavy snow.
Listen.
On Saturday?
Listen. I don't care. And maybe
It's
they don't
gonna be
show
fine.
up. Maybe Iowa State doesn't get here.
That's true.
And if they don't, I think K-State should still like scrimmage. Or no, they should play the game anyway, but play it 5-on-0.
Yep.
And beat them like.
Yes.
Ooh, Nat says play against the media. No. No.
As long as they O isn't playing zone, then they might have a chance to win.
Look,
Oh, boo.
I put up 4 points in the paint my last intramural game, so I'm not saying I'm playing better than some of the bigs on this K-State team.
You went
but
3 of 4 from 3 in your other intramural game.
That's
didn't you?
right.
And Flendo, I don't want to brag, but we got pretty hot at Papa
Oh
Shot.
yeah.
At Dave
Papa Shot at Dave and Buster's
And this
in
and
Austin.
This was full size Papa Shot. This wasn't like some little,
No,
thank you.
it was
We did that too.
it was more our speed.
Yeah.
The big baskets. The real deal guys.
Okay, yeah. So we all agree crowd's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. I think it's
Yep.
going to be the best non-KU atmosphere in that building. Like Rob said, since 1989.
It's not like-
For Purdue or whoever it was in the opening.
Purdue.
Yeah, give him the mic, Flanders.
I'm gonna say it was in 91 or 92. OU and Skeeter. Is that the name from the past, right? And it was
Skeeter Barnes or something like that?
Jones. And he spit on one.
Ski Jones.
Jones.
He spit on one of our players. Skeeter.
No, I think
Skeeter. It was Skeeter.
Barnes. Was it not Skeeter Barnes?
No,
For
Skeeter
OU?
plays for OU.
I'm
I don't remember his
looking it
last
up.
name. It was a long time ago. A lot of beers ago.
Berry?
But I mean, spit on one of our players, Henry,
Same
and
as
he
Barnes.
wore them stockings up to his knees. Oh my gosh, it was old school. But anyhow, yeah, it was crazy fun. Keith was
I
there.
feel
We used to
like-
sit together
I feel
all
like
the
since
games.
I feel like since you really appreciate old Big 8 basketball, you have a player you hated more in the Big 8 than Jason Sutherland at Missouri? Because I feel like that's everybody's answer. Like, is there anybody that comes to mind? You're like, boy, I hated him more
Rex
than Jason.
Walters.
Yeah, I mean, KU's almost like cheating. I mean, you're right. I couldn't stand him. Who's that?
Stupanovic
in the Big 8.
from Missouri.
What year did he work? I know this is bad pod. I'm yelling across the room, Rudy. But
Byron Hansbard from Oklahoma State. No, not Hansbard. What was it? Byron Houston.
I like Byron
Houston.
I liked Byron Houston.
There he is, right there. Yeah, that's Skeeter.
I liked Byron. Is it what's Stepanovich's first name?
Steve
Steve
Stepanovic.
Stepanovich got a vote for being the most hated Big 8 player.
Who was the Band-Aid man from Missouri? What was his first name? You guys don't
no
know the
idea.
Band-Aid man?
Never
Cheatham?
heard of him.
Cheetah?
I think it was Johnson and
Kenny
Johnson.
Cheatham, the wide receiver for Nebraska in '98. That's my second '98 Nebraska reference in the last 12 minutes.
So-
remember Kenny Cheatham for them?
Yes.
Caught that one-handed touchdown in the end zone from Eric Crouch.
Yes.
Ugh, so mad.
Derek
For
Cheatham.
me,
Thank
because
you. Yeah, I didn't
of,
like him.
of my age, it's Danny Manning.
Yeah, see,
With his putback basket, I still remember it sitting. I was at my house way back then,
See, I'm so
watching
lucky.
it on the black and white TV. I'm sure, but it was color anyhow. But no, he had that
Did you
putback
have a
basket.
knob on the TV?
I know,
You had
I
to turn a
did.
knob?
He had that little putback and beat OU because OU was my secondary team way back then.
Wayman Tisdale, is that who that
yeah,
was back then?
he had the putback.
Yeah.
So I still remember that.
I'm glad I don't remember that. I'm glad I was too young and didn't watch that Elite Eight game. And I never want to see a video of it, ever. Like, I have no interest
I
in seeing
cried.
that game. I would right now, so I'm not going to watch it. Second question from Neilio and Flando. You did so good on that one. Let's do you again.
Okay.
At some point, he sees Mike McGurl or Sean Williams being put in for a late game situation to produce. Do you think they're up to that challenge?
I think Mike McGurl has done that before, so
true.
he absolutely is up to the challenge, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does it again. Sean Williams, I mean, you know how much I praise him and love his ability. I don't think right now he's ready, but in the how was the question?
Let's go on.
Yeah, no, I think Sean Williams will get to that point, but he's not there right now to make big shots in a crunch time of a game.
So Mike, yes. Sean, not yet.
Yes,
Perfect.
exactly.
Perfect. This is funny. This is Trenton77, and I might not get it. Someone has to fill me in. I think I get it. It says AAF Fantasy. Is that the new Pro Football League?
Yes.
He says AAF Fantasy. Who to sit and start this weekend? That's hilarious. Like I just like the question. You know, I'm an XFL guy though, so I don't care about the AAF. I'm all about Bob Stoops, Vince McMahon, long time XFL.
Look,
back to
Trent
Rod
Richardson.
Smart. He hate me. Mike,
He had a couple good touchdowns.
Tommy Maddox won the first ever XFL MVP. We'll see the second in a couple years.
Trent Richardson, start him. He had like 2-3 touchdowns and only like 3 yards this past weekend.
He's on the. That sounds like his regular NFL career. Like he's on the
Yeah,
he's on the way back.
there you go.
KSU Burke 54. Who I kind of thought would come tonight. Like honestly, he's not here. I'm a little sad. He says, "Do you run out of material to talk about when you have the game and the KSO show on the same day?" Absolutely. And I feel like a phony because I go on the game and I say all the same things I come and say here. And I think if somebody listened to both of those, they think I'm the most boring person in the world because I just said the exact same thing. So that's just a personal question. What Nat, what was that?
I listened to both back to back just now, so yeah, I agree.
that I'm a phony.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, to me, it's right up there. Wabash 81, that was my birth year. That's why I don't remember, like Danny Manning as well. But is asked, is Good News eligible to play this semester? He is. He could play right now if they wanted him to. He's not ready. They're going to redshirt him. He'll still be a redshirt freshman next year. I will say, Flando, I'm going to bring you back in for something. We've kind of paid attention to him a little bit. It's just pregame warm-ups, man. They're not scrimmaging.
Yeah.
I know that. I understand they're just shooting around. But he is a longer, smoother athlete and with a better-looking shooting stroke than I understood him being as a recruit. I went from thinking this guy's not going to be a factor for 3 years.
Yeah.
So now maybe he could play a little bit next year.
Yeah, no, and I put it on the board recently. I think he could end up being the biggest contributor out of the class because he has this extra year to understand the system, and usually that's what you need in this system. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Good News ends up being that guy, but there are, I mean, Murphy and DeJuan Gordon both are really good recruits coming in too, so they could make some waves. But like you said, we saw Good News. Like, he looks bigger than you'd think too. He's got long arms, and I think he could be a piece for this team sooner than we think.
That is good news. Scott Wildcat. I mean, how many Good News puns will I make over the next 4.5 years?
It's a great name. We need to
is.
look for a guy named Bad News.
Yeah, and they could play 2 different ways, you
And
know,
like
like
a
good
tandem.
cop, bad cop. Yeah, you know, like Good News is like, hey man, good game, and Bad News is just like headbutting guys, you know, like totally like the enforcer, totally different. This is Scott Wildcat again. This is your guy, and I like this. I'm gonna ask all of these. This may take some thought, so I understand this might slow down for a second. You have to talk through this and argue and disagree. What K-State, we'll do it both ways. What K-State argument do you like the most and hate the most? So, like, what stereotypical K-State argument do you get mad about, or do you like? His examples, he likes debating the jerseys and the rafters. He thinks it's a good debate to have. Ones he hates are, like, parking spot displacement at football games, the chant at basketball games. So, what ones trigger you, and what ones do you like? I'll go first. Thinking KU is going to win the league triggers me, clearly. Or giving them any respect triggers me. The ones I like hearing about, I don't know if this fits the question. I want to do more of the debate of how good or not good K-State will be in basketball next year. Like, I think that's a debate that people either we don't talk about enough, or people dismiss it too quickly. Like, whoa, I think it'd be terrible. Do you think everyone brings back everyone in the league? No, they all lose everybody. It's how basketball works, you know? But so I like that one, and I wish that would happen more. So I know it's a tricky question. Does anything come to mind for anybody? I'm not going to make you go in order. Arguments you wish we had more of, and ones you wish would die.
The one that I cannot stand is the perception that all announcers hate K-State.
Oh, yep.
My goodness, that gets so old. I was actually watching the end of the Texas Tech game last night. After the under 4 timeout, they spent about 5 minutes talking about K-State. And I just thought, I bet all those Texas Tech fans are ticked.
Right.
Because they're talking about K-State. I'm like, every announcer has to fill air at some point during every game. KU is always going to be a talking point because they've won the league for so many years in a row. And they still talk about us plenty when our games are going on. So
I love
that's
that
a
one.
huge
That's
pet
a
peeve of
great
mine
example.
that drives me bananas.
And I would agree with that. I think it goes back to what a lot of people around here, because a lot of K-State fans are also going to be Royals fans. A lot of Royals fans are quick to jump on Joe Buck and say, he was just infatuated with Madison Bumgarner in that World Series. Well, he should have been.
He should have been,
Madison
because
Bumgarner had one of the best World Series performances of all time. Joe Buck is actually good at his job if you just shut up and listen and don't think
get him,
he's here
Mason.
because he's Jack Buck. So then on top of that, I would say, going to your comment on the debate about next year for K-State basketball, I think a lot of people don't talk about it right now and maybe don't want to talk about it because they're nervous because they're so unsure of what it might be next year.
Sure.
I
get why,
Yeah, I know there are pieces there that might make that I would say, look, don't completely write this team off to get back to the NCAA tournament and finish middle of the pack, win some important games in the Big 12. But I understand why people would be concerned and why you don't want to talk about it when you have such a good thing going now.
And I totally get that. That's the part where I'm dumb and worded it poorly. I get why we don't talk about it because we're in the middle of the greatest season they've had forever. What I mean is I guess I get annoyed when people say, we better do it this year because next year's going to be terrible. And then no one pushes back and says, well, wait a minute. Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Nelson, anything you love talking about, we don't talk about enough, or anything that you wish people would stop saying? And just say no if you don't have any, and I'll skip you.
A former pet peeve of mine was when Coach Snyder was still here and the conversation about him retiring or whatnot, and the crowd that, you better be careful what you wish for, and he's the only guy who's ever won here and will never win again when he leaves and all of that, and that irritated me.
That's a good one, too. I think he wants some beer. I like that question, though. I'd like to think of more and maybe get back to that later, but I'm going to keep scanning a little bit. We also have, I know, some questions. Flanders let me know in a different thread that I'm going to check out. This will be fun. We're all going to have to do this one, too. And I'm going to make Nats do this, too. Okay. Philando, you're going to do this, too, so you got to be listening. You listening? Okay. Rank these in order of preference. This is from K-State Crazy. In order of preference, breaking the streak, a.k.a. winning the Big 12 outright, winning the Big 12 tournament title, Elite 8, or Final Four. So Elite 8, Final Four, I mean, that's kind of obvious. So I'm going to throw Final Four out because that'd be the best, right, for everybody?
Easy.
Everybody? Nods? Yep. Okay, Flanders? Yep. All right. So now, and I think we'll just have you answer the questions. Let's rank them. Rank them in order of preference. Breaking the streak, winning the Big 12 tournament championship, or going to the Elite 8. We're going to start with Grant and work our way around the table here.
Okay, so we've got breaking the streak, winning the conference championship, like the tournament championship, and then Elite 8 appearance. All right, so if it's just that as a hypothetical, then I would say breaking the streak, winning the conference title outright, that's a massive achievement. I hold winning conference titles to a very high regard because, especially in a round-robin conference where you have to play 18 games in the conference. Well, is that right? Yeah. And then 10 games in football. That is a massive achievement. You have to be good for 10 games and 18 games. I think that's bigger than 9 games. Yes, whatever. I think that's bigger than, and I used to put that against like winning BCS games, and people would say, oh, you haven't won a BCS game.
Right.
It's like, who cares? We just won a conference title. We beat 9 teams, and we were better than 9 teams for an entire season. I think that's a huge achievement, and that's a trophy, and it goes in the cabinet. I think that's top of the list. Second, I would put Elite 8 for sure. If there's is it like Elite 8 and we get bounced?
Just says
no, we're not going to go there. We can't go into those
We're saying you're
details.
not getting, well, if you're getting further, then we know it's better. So we're just saying Elite 8. You're losing the Elite 8.
I mean, that's definitely better than, than a
Big 12 tournament
championship. Even though that is my favorite time of the year and it's absolutely incredible. That's my ranking. So it goes, outright conference title, Elite 8, and then conference tournament championship.
Perfect. Somebody remind me at the end I have a go back question, but I don't want to lose our flow. So same question, Mason. Rank those things.
Yeah.
Rank the 3.
I think it's a pretty easy and obvious one. It's the conference outright, then the Elite 8, and then the conference tournament. I think the only time that the conference tournament is important to anybody is if you're Oklahoma State or somebody else that's terrible in the conference one year, because that's your last chance at it. But running it outright, that's the biggest thing, especially in the Big 12, because nobody's done it for a long time now. And then on top of that, the Elite 8's pretty important because that gives you at least one game to get to the Final Four.
So we got back-to-back Big 12 championship, Elite 8, NCAA tournament, or conference tournament. Same for you, Nelson? Any difference?
For me.
Let me hop in.
No.
Okay.
Go ahead. Get in there.
I don't think that the conference tournament is like as worthless as Mason made it seem. I think it's
then let me cut into you because that was my go back.
It doesn't I think his ranking is correct for sure, but it's huge. Like, it would be very nice to win the conference tournament because it's just recency bias, like that helps so big with seeding. Even if you're like a top team, it doesn't matter. Like it's a huge thing to win, and we've never won. Like when was the last time we won?
Right. Well, they've never won the Big 12.
I'm a person that puts a lot of stock into the conference tournaments because of I've seen the UConn teams that have won the NCAA title. They've run through. They've won the Big East tournament those years. I do put stock in the conference tournament, but I'm just saying for the sake of these three things, it doesn't really matter compared to winning the conference regular season title and then going to the Elite Eight.
Nelson said the same. I'll come back because I have a. Go ahead, Nelson.
No, I can do it. I'll ask a question at the end.
Okay, fair enough. Mine's the same. I would rank them the same, but I'll put a caveat in there. Is I think it's because of the streak. It's because of breaking the streak. If it was just win the conference championship in a regular conference when nobody's won it 14 in a row and it's not your in-state rival, I'd probably put the Elite Eight ahead of it, at least in a one-year time. I do think conference championships are very meaningful, and I think people disregard them too quickly. But because of all this, I would still say, no, you're not getting back in right now.
When we win the conference title.
You're not getting back in.
Outright.
Nats, rank the three.
Okay, so I'm going to say win it outright. That's been their motto since the beginning of the season. I'm kind of putting it just in this season in particular. With that, I would actually say win the tournament. Considering how we've done in the past, I think that would be like an exclamation point on this season to win it outright, win the tournament, and then with that kind of following along in the expectation that we would go to the Elite Eight. I think that would just be an assumption considering how far we've gone. So that would be fun.
No, I like that, and because I'm kind of a big full tournament guy. That's the point I'm going to get back to, because I think it's more meaningful than some say. But I'm still with you. Fan and Flanders, different rankings.
Yeah, I would agree with the consensus. I would say for this year's team, what Grant and Mason were saying, if they do win the conference tournament, that might be the difference between a 3 and a 2 seed or a 4 and a 2 seed.
Right.
Even if they just tie for the conference title. So that could be a big deal for this team as far as seeding goes.
Flando the same?
I'm the same, yeah.
Rob, same? Yeah, you got to hand him that mic.
For this year, yes,
Right.
I'm the same, but and I do have a counter here on the importance of a tournament.
See, I'm with you.
The tournament win, it's not there. The committee's already pretty much decided their seedings when everybody's playing, except for the Oklahoma State sucks and they did make a good run. They get lucked into a play-in game. But if you go back, remember where I live, you go back a couple years, Cal had a great run and won the tournament, even though they didn't get into that 1 seed. I think ended up with like a 2 or a 3.
Yeah.
And Cal was like, "Why are we even playing this damn game? You've already decided."
Kind of.
And I fall into that still. That hey, they've already decided. It doesn't really matter unless you're a bottom feeder that made a good run.
And I think it would probably be best if these conference tournaments didn't exist, because I don't think anybody truly wants to play in them unless you're one of those teams that thinks we can still make our shot at the NCAA tournament. But they're there, so you got to play them, and I think it's better for you to go and win 3 games rather than to lose 1 or 2 and be done.
I mean, just if you think about it, if K-State goes through and has a great finish to the season and then wins the tournament, they're rolling.
Right.
We're all like, Final Four, here we come, because they've got a full head of steam going into the NCAA.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk a second. You guys actually walked me right into it about conference tournaments. This has always been a fascinating topic for me. I'll tell you my stance and not play a trick, and then ask you guys your point. It's weird to me that they don't matter more than they do. In every other sport, they determine the champion through the tournament champion. We don't go back and say Kansas went undefeated in the regular season, Villanova won the tournament, they're both the champion. No, Villanova's the champion. We don't go in any other sport and say, but look at the regular season champion. Why in college basketball, in the Big 12, do we recognize 2 champions like that? Now, I would listen, and I'm not saying it's not more meaningful to win the regular season, because it's harder. I agree, it's harder. But it's harder, but they don't apply that logic to any other sport. They just say whoever won the playoff is the champion. Why do you think it's not like that in college basketball? Does that bug anybody else, or am I alone in that feeling?
I would agree if I was still like 7 or 8 years old. That was a really tough concept for me to grasp, that teams would go and win the conference tournament. And it's like, well, no, KU still actually won the conference.
No, I get it. But no, why is it like that?
I don't know why it's like that. I think it's just one of those things where people realize, hey, we can make money off the conference tournament, and our conference champion gets that automatic tournament berth. So really what it does is it gives a conference like the Big 12 this year a shot to maybe sneak a 9th team in there if Oklahoma State or West Virginia catches fire and gets real lucky and wins.
Let me ask the question a different way. If you had to take it down to one champion, which would you recognize as the conference champion? Start with Grant.
The round robin.
So why would you? So in the Super Bowl, so here's what my confusion is. Then why would you say a team that went 16 like the Patriots did and then lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl? Why aren't the Patriots the champion? Because you just told me you value the regular season more than the playoffs.
I do, but I mean the Big 12 tournament isn't the playoffs. It's
but why isn't? That's my question. Like,
I don't know.
Does nobody understand what I'm asking? Or
well, you don't play like an NFC or an AFC tournament before you play the actual playoffs.
Right.
Here you play a conference tournament and then you play the tournament that actually matters.
Right.
So I think that's the difference.
I guess I get it. I mean, maybe I'm just wrong, but like, what were you going to say?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on. I mean, number one, it's still a long time ago now, but conference tournaments really didn't become a thing. I mean, the Big 8 didn't even have a conference tournament at the end of the season until the late 70s, early 80s. The Big 10 didn't have a conference tournament until 1998.
Perfect.
And so the conference tournament became a thing as the NCAA tournament expanded.
Makes perfect
sense. It became much more important as the NCAA tournament expanded. Then those lower leagues that had to have at-large bids, that became their season. And then for bigger conferences, it became that's how you get in the tournament is by playing well.
Makes perfect sense to me.
I mean, if you look at two years ago, if we don't beat Baylor in the first round, we probably don't go to the NCAA tournament.
And it became important too because of money and bigger TV
and then
contracts.
the money in TV in the last 10 years.
But see, I legitimately didn't know that, and that explains it to me. Is like we didn't grow up with that being the championship, so it never became it. That makes sense. I just thought it was weird to have a sport that says we're going to crown our regular season champion the champion over the tournament champion, but it makes sense because the tournament's only existed for 20% of the time.
Could you imagine going back to the 70s when they had it in the middle of the season? Like you had your non-conference, and then you had the holiday Big 8 tournament.
I've heard that's crazy. That's fascinating.
It's hard for us to even imagine.
That would be fun.
I mean, as a fan, I've always looked at it as just like kind of a pointless thing unless you're.
Well, that's what it is.
Desperately needing to win it to get into the tournament, but it's something I've really enjoyed, and it's just.
Or really, like when Frank lost to Colorado the third time, like I was so mad.
Yeah.
But that's the point I was.
That's
the point I was trying to get to. Is trying to understand why it doesn't matter. I know it doesn't matter. I get it. I was trying to understand why. Because every other sport, the tournament champion's your champion, but in college basketball, it's not. But it's because they didn't do it this way. Tradition. Right? I love the Big 12 tournament, though. Would you rather it was early in the season? If it's not going to matter anyway, no?
No, it's. No? I mean, timing-wise, it's a lot better for me to go in March.
Well, then here we go. That is
a good book into the season, too, because then you have the actual best team in the conference. They're going to get to work their way through.
The seedings make sense,
So I think it's a good time.
And it kind of has that bowl game type atmosphere and all the teams.
Especially if you are from Iowa State.
I would equate it to a bowl game. Yeah. And again, so I was never trying to argue it's more important. I was trying to understand why does it not matter? And that's why, But whatever one K-State wins, if I'm going to recognize, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. Like whatever one they win is that I'm going to recognize. All right, guys. T. Crummy says K-State. We'll say K-State finishes 15-3 or 14-4. Let's say 14-4 for the sake of this argument. And the second place team's around 12-6. He's asking in that scenario. Is Bruce Weber the Big 12 Coach of the Year, and is Barry Brown the Big 12 Player of the Year? So he's asking, K-State wins the league outright. Does that mean Coach of the Year, Player of the Year for K-State? Pretty simple question. Let's go with fan first.
If it's outright, I think he wins Coach of the Year. If we tie it, then I think whoever we tie it with, especially if it would be Baylor or Texas Tech, is going to win Coach of the Year. And then what was this?
Will Barry be Conference Player of the Year if K-State wins the league?
I would assume in that scenario Barry would be Conference Player of the Year because he's got better numbers overall than Dean. As when you look at traditional numbers, not Player of the Year. Not Player of the Year.
Fine.
But I could see a scenario where Dean blows up the last 7 games and surpasses Barry. But that's
the thing is there's enough season left. We never know. We could be heading for that 7-game 20 in a row or 20-point scoring stretch for Dean Wade. You never know.
I was going to have the exact same answer. I'd be shocked if Bruce wasn't the Coach of the Year. And, if Dean or someone like that blows up the last 7 games and carries this, then Barry probably would not
What if Mac blows up?
Well,
Mac attack.
then
Cop-out answer.
drawing straws.
The cop-out answer is they probably end up having co-coaches of the year in the Big 12.
Boo.
So it's probably going to be Bruce Weber and Scott Drew or somebody like that ends up getting it. I think Scott Drew probably, as long as Baylor doesn't totally collapse down the stretch, he gets it no matter what. And then I think one thing that helps Barry Brown out, I'm not sure he gets it unless KU really starts to tank and people forget about Dedrick Lawson, is the fact that Barry Brown's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year. And so I think even though his offensive numbers won't be as high as some, you have to also factor in that for 40 minutes a game, he's going hard on both ends, and you thought he's the best defender in the conference, and that should be one thing that plays a lot of factor into it.
Any different feelings? You see anything unique outside of what these fine men have said?
I mean, I think if we win it outright, Bruce is Coach of the Year, absolutely. I mean, Barry, he's averaging, 15.5 points a game.
I think 17 in the conference games, too.
He
So, yeah.
is the best defender in the conference, bar none. I mean, absolutely. I would say no.
That was a joke. I don't believe that. I don't believe
I mean,
that.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. And, if we win it outright, everyone's going to be talking about us. I think, yeah, for sure.
And as a K-State fan, if Bruce did share it with Scott Drew, I wouldn't be upset. I mean, Baylor was picked
No, I wouldn't
preseason
either.
8th and finished 2nd or 3rd, then, yeah, he probably deserves that credit.
Same Flando?
Would you be upset if Self won it? Co with Bruce?
It's a good question, actually. He's
If
asking
we
you.
won
Yeah.
outright,
Are we
No,
winning
if-
outright?
If they
No.
tied the league.
if we shared the league title,
No,
With
I
Kansas.
just mean coaches of the year, Self and
if
Weber.
K-State wins
yeah.
outright, yes, I'd be very
Yeah,
upset
yeah.
if he shared it.
What if they share it?
If we shared it, I would not be upset if he shared
Okay.
it.
No, I think in any situation, KU needs to come back, win this thing outright, and look dang good doing it for Bill Self to have any justifiable reason to be Coach of the Year, because he's got the most talent in the league on his team still, even with his guy D'Souza out. Who cares how you pronounce his name? He doesn't matter this year.
Not going to play here anyway.
Azubuike out, guess what? They still have the best team in this conference, and they're not playing like it right now. And that's on Bill Self for not developing those young guys quick enough, because he's the one that knew he was getting these freshmen in here to try and compete and win the conference.
We could turn into another whole Coach of the Year, because I know we've had it as friends to talk about this a little bit. The idea of a Coach of the Year is fascinating, because on one hand I could just say, just give it to whoever wins the league every year. Like, they were the best coach in the league because their team won the league. You shouldn't reward somebody, right, for overachieving to the point you thought they weren't any good and then they finished in the middle of the league. Now, I'm not saying I believe that, but I could see an argument for saying just give it to the guy who wins the league. If you're in that route, Bruce by far. But if you're in the look for the team that was picked, to finish 9th, that finished 4th, then it's Scott Drew.
Like, didn't Tubby Smith win Coach of the Year
He did.
last or year before he left the Big 12? Yeah. So that's one of those situations where it's like, we thought your team was going to be terrible, and you were average,
Exactly.
so here you go.
Exactly. And I'm not sure which way I would even vote, but it's like those are the two. Take one of those paths, and I don't know which one you take,
Yeah, and I was assuming, Baylor finishes like 2nd. Then I would be upset if we shared it with Drew, because to me that's not an average team. Then
Oh, no. I think Baylor would be a great example of where I'd be okay with it. Because if they can go to finish 2nd, from that, then I'd say it. But I get a little annoyed when the team who's picked to finish 9th finishes 5th, and they're like Coach of the Year. I'm like,
I agree 100%.
By like a
with that.
game or two, it's
right.
like you lucked out and so-and-so lost the game the last weekend.
Right.
Like, no.
Right. He walked away. We had one more question left. I believe it's from our man from Louisville, Rob. He asked what's the farthest somebody has come. I mean, he's come the farthest, but if I was going to argue for Rudy over there, he's come to like 7 or 8 of these, and that's like a 2-hour drive every time. And if you add all those up, he may have come the farthest to come to these shows. So, I mean, like, it's not a slam dunk. That's all the questions there, but somebody came in and kindly threw in another 10 or so questions into the thread about the KSO show. So we're gonna rattle through these questions. I mean, then we're gonna do Iowa State preview and get out of here and let some people enjoy Valentine's Day a little bit. All right, KSU family, let's start. I'm gonna go first, and then we'll go to Mason, and we'll go around the table. What are your thoughts on the importance placed on the diversity, an old wooden ship, of climbing staff by the current team and future recruits, both consciously and unconsciously? It's huge. I mean, like, it's a tricky topic to walk into, but it matters, and that's in any walk of life. You would love, the people managing or leading you or whatever it is to be somewhat representative of your background. And people who think that doesn't matter, I think it does, and I think it matters to kids. So there's definitely value in it.
Do you want me to play public enemy number one here for a second?
I don't know. I'm actually terrified of how you're going to play public enemy number one on this topic. But go ahead.
I think not only is it big, obviously we're talking about the different backgrounds of these people, not just in where they've coached at, what they've coached, and all this stuff, but also I think it's big that it isn't people that have been at K-State their entire lives that are on this coaching staff now.
I agree with that,
I think
too.
K-State kind of started to get hampered down by that just because they all became stale to the way things had been and said, that's just the way it is. That's how Coach Snyder likes it. We're cool with that. So I think now it's good to have a guy like Colin Klein on the staff that's been here. He's played here, so guys can go to him for that. But they also need guys that they know they can go and talk to and say, look, I don't know about this, without somebody immediately thinking you're trying to overthrow what we've built over the course of 2-3 decades.
That's smart. I mean, so yeah, you're thinking of diversity not just from a cultural, racial perspective, but from a background perspective, which is also important to talk about. And sometimes Mason will just say something really smart. I'm waiting for the joke. Yeah, you're like, I'm like, where's the funny line? And it's it's just
when he comes in, ready for me to be public enemy number one.
Right. He starts with what Flanders whispered off mic was, I'll be public enemy number one on this topic, and the topic was about diversity, and so I really was afraid of where that
could have been bad. I wasn't really thinking about my wording.
But you did a great job. I'm going to ask this to Flando because it's a media question, Flando. So I need you over here. How undeniable is the new energy, excitement, and focus around the football program as both a fan? Oh, it says fan too. As both a fan, you're both as a fan and media member. It must really solidify the decision made by Gene Taylor and President Myers moving in a new direction. So again, the start of the question, talk about the energy you feel. Yeah. If you feel it, and you can say I don't feel any, But if you feel it about K-State football, talk about it.
Oh my God, yeah, I felt it from, the moment he had his press conference, Kleinman's first press conference, the energy in that building was just insane. And then every little press conference he's had after that, and talking to coaches and other people, everyone was super excited, super stoked, and then getting into
Cam stoked.
Yeah, exactly. Getting into recruiting and the fact he was recruiting at a very high level. For what he was doing, asked to do in a short period of time, the energy only increased. The fact that he was able to still finish out a recruiting class that is similar, if not better, than what Snyder has been doing these past few years. So yeah, the energy is electric.
I just thought of something we could have done right now. I just saw Grant, and I thought we could have had the first between two Grants right there. We could have put Nats in that chair.
Man.
It had we could still do it in the show. The between two Grants, Flando and KSU.
I don't know if we
His
have
last name's the same as your first name.
I don't know if we have the comedy chops of what's his name?
Did you get that? That was funny.
Zach.
Yeah, Zach Galifianakis, but
right.
We can try.
Okay, we'll move on. Now that wasn't a shot at you. That was a shot at me and just my joke not really going over with the crowd. I really thought it was funny. It's ironic. Maybe he listened to me say this live and he's here and he typed this question in because he wanted to talk about next year's Wildcats, which I really appreciate that. So I'm going to ask Fan this question. He has questions 3 and 4, both titled, so I'll read them together. What do you see next year's team identity being after the 3 seniors leave? Really, what will be the major differences in the strengths and weaknesses of this year's team to next year's team? And who will be the players to lead that identity next year? So just what would be different? What does the team look like to you, and who could be the leaders?
Well, for sure, if X is back, I think he's number one. Most experienced guy, probably the best player on the team. After that, I'd say it's got to be Cardi and Mike. They're definitely – they have that persona and that presence about them right now, even as secondary role players. So I definitely see those two guys as being the guys to lead the team. As far as style goes, offensively, it's really hard to say, I think, for me, especially looking at the new guys coming in. I think at least one of those guys will be an impact player, probably maybe 2. But the key is going to be the defense. Can we play defense at the same level that we've seen this group of seniors play the last 3 years will be the key to what this team does. So that would be how I'd answer that. And if those 3 players are going to be the keys for next year going in.
Absolutely. I think the interesting note, and it's something that gives me hope as, I guess, the fan part of me, is like you said, Cardi and Mike already seem to have that kind of thing in them when when they're not put in that position. So I think when they're put in that position, they'll probably have it. They'll take a step back. I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I mean, I think what people have to understand is that step back could be from a 27-win Big 12 championship team, you know? So, I mean, they could still be a good basketball team. Nelson, this is a lengthy one as well, but it's written very well, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I think you're a very, very passionate, very smart fan. Just how special is this senior class in your eyes? Barry is the last player since Jacob Pullen where I could look at him and know he can mentally and physically carry a team with his style of leadership and play. I'm not saying he's the basketball player Jake was, just that he has as much of an impact on his team as Jake did. He will be the biggest loss of these three. Cam is a very polarizing player, incorrect, and has come up huge at times and other times and made fans want to cut him from the team. He is way undervalued. This is his words, not mine. He is way undervalued, especially when healthy. Dean could be even more polarizing than Cam, with all the potential in the world that everyone else could see his whole career, but he seemed to shy away from. Looking back, he could have been the best of the player. He could have been one of the best players in the league. He is, right? And maybe his country, his junior and senior seasons, but didn't have the killer mentality that Barry did. It's a long question, but I liked it. I mean, but the gist of it is what does this senior class mean to you as a K-State fan? Of course, we don't know what's going to happen. I understand that. But, like, in the path they're on right now and what they've done, like, how important is this senior class?
Extremely, and maybe one of the best ways to say it is, as media, we're not supposed to cheer. And on senior day, when they introduce those three seniors, I'll feel bad that I cannot stand up and clap for those kids.
Why don't you just move away from our seat? Go sit by a rich guy in the seats and they're like, hey, you
walk out here and hug him. Smack on the butt, say, good game, all these for you.
If you walk out there and give 15, give it to everybody, not just the seniors, 15 butt pats down the line. I think that'd be great.
Coach Corn, good game.
Yeah.
A few more thoughts. They came into this program when it was...
Way to stay not rattled by it.
I wouldn't say it was in shambles, but it was a little bit of disarray.
Oh, yeah, it was 0-2, down 21 to West Virginia.
And not this year, when they came in as freshmen.
Oh, yeah, it was in
And they've
shambles.
stuck by this coaching staff from day one. And in the media, whatever it may be, their confidence in each other and this coaching staff has never wavered. And just very specifically, I mean, like Bruce has told the story, his freshman year when he asked who's going to step up the defensive stopper, it was Barry. Going back to last year when Cam got hurt, Barry calls a team meeting. He comes out and scores 38 points, has 6 steals, and played 40 minutes. It's one of the greatest games I've ever seen a K-State Wildcat play, and was all over the place. And and not to say that Dean and Cam haven't done great things because they have, but I think Barry has been the leader of that group, and the rest of the team has kind of taken on his persona.
He has, right? I mean, I think it's fair to say, I think Dean would say the same thing. Like, Barry's the leader of the team. I didn't notice, somebody else caught this is off topic a bit. Dean gave the most passionate pregame speech I've ever seen him give in that Texas game. And I tried to catch it on my phone, but I was up high trying to zoom it in. I've never seen him, he was standing over everyone, more or less yelling at them. And I was just surprised to see that because I've never seen him be the guy talking in that huddle. It was Dean Wade in Austin, but Barry Brown's the leader. And you reminded me of another thing when you were talking and saying really smart stuff. The earlier question about what kind of conversations do you hate or what arguments do you hate about K-State, mine is the Bruce has lost his team. He never once lost those kids at any point, and those seniors at any point in the last 4 years. People jumping to that was so frustrating to me when they were struggling. Sure, they could have been in danger of doing it if they kept losing games, but it never happened. And I think it's because of what Nelson said, because those seniors loved him and believed in him and trusted him, they were never going to let that happen. They could have lost more games, they could have not been successful, but he was never going to lose those 3 seniors because of how loyal they were to him.
I don't know if this is a stretch to say, but and it doesn't just go to this senior class, but this group of K-State players that we see now is probably the most meaningful to K-State basketball and most memorable going back to that 2010 team. I think 20 years from now when you're talking about K-State teams, you're going to say Poland, Clemente, those guys in 2010, and you're going to say Dean Wade and Barry Brown in 2019.
You just gave me the greatest segue to this next question because he says, and I'm going to go, I want every, that's going to be fun, but I can't decide. He wants to know what type of player and how will the K-State Nation remember the following players once their careers are done. I'm going to pick one guy to do all 4, and I'm going to pick Grant. So, I want you to, this will be tough. I'm going to put you on the spot here, man.
Not the guy you want to do that to.
Yeah, I just think this
let's roll, baby.
It's a tough question. I mean, let's just get through it. Xavier Sneed, assume he stays all 4 years. When they look back at him, what will they think of Xavier Sneed?
Ooh,
It's a tough question.
What will they think of him? I mean, there's still an entire senior year left
Right.
for him to be played, and he's been honestly a crucial part to last year in his sophomore season. He absolutely went off against
21
Kentucky.
against Kentucky.
21
You were there?
points. I
Oh
wasn't
wait, no,
there.
you weren't there. You came the next one.
Man, I wish
That
I
was
was
not
there.
intentional. I feel bad.
I mean, no, it's fine. Nothing to worry about there. But I mean, I personally will think of X on a very high. I will think of him very highly. I mean, he's a great defender. He's what's that guy's name that was doing the announcements for us against KU? Van Gundy? Stan Van Gundy?
SVG.
Could not have agreed more with him. That he reminds me a lot of Rodney Magruder. Honestly, I mean, he's gonna play in the NBA, and he's gonna be a perfect role guy. He can score. He can defend consistently. He can get boards. He's super athletic. I'm gonna think of him very highly. I'm gonna remember him more than I remember Dominique Sutton.
Oh yeah.
Easily.
No,
and he was a
cruelty
huge
to Dom there, but yeah.
He was a huge part of that team that we all love so much.
Feels like Xavier's
I will
Dom if
think-
he could just hit some shots.
And
You know?
and he's got an
Like-
entire, and I'm saying that right now, and he has an entire
That's
senior
the-
season
yeah.
left. So I will hold him to in a very high regard.
And-
Next question.
And I was just gonna say Xavier's first 2 years, my biggest complaint probably been when he didn't score. He tended to maybe pout. That's too strong a word, but get his head down. But
It
I don't
affected
think
the
that-
rest of his game.
Yeah, he affected the rest of his game. And this year, man, even
Not
though
really.
he
KU game last
scored,
year was rough.
he's been boarding. He's been deep. I mean, playing D, and yeah,
He could go-
He's
Well-
been contributing in other ways.
The only thing I'll add is if X is back and next year's team goes to the tournament, that'll be the first 4-year player
Oh,
in a
to go
while to
forward.
do that. Go back to Rodney.
And he played a significant role in all
Rodney
four.
and Will Spradling.
Also,
So
something that's
that'd
important.
be a big deal.
Yeah.
Something that's important to think about is that he's a headband guy,
Also big.
which is immediately makes him stick out in my memory. So
Everyone. Now,
That's big.
the thing
I mean,
is,
that's
there's
big.
2 more of the same question. What are you going to think of these guys?
keep going. I'm ready.
But you nailed it, and this does require even more projection than the X ones. You're going to have to guess a little bit about what they're going to do. And
Okay.
that's why I made you this guy. Cartier Jada.
I mean, Cardi already has his moment at K-State.
It probably can't be topped.
Frankly,
Yeah.
I don't think he will top that moment in his career. That moment was the loudest. Maybe. I mean,
Did we have this talk last
everyone
week?
loves to
Basically,
say
it was
Raptors.
the greatest moment, like the coolest moment in K-State sport. Like
Okay, Matt,
the coolest.
you lived through the Oklahoma blocked punt.
Yep, I was at both.
I was at both as
I
well.
was at both.
And frankly, I genuinely think
Nelson
that it
was too.
rivaled that moment.
That's because that's the
In
moment.
terms of just straight noise, I had a complete sensory overload in that moment, and I mean, it was unbelievable.
I'm
Never.
not ready for this conversation.
It's a tough thing because I was 9,
tough.
10 years old when we blocked that punt, and there was so much frustration in that stadium.
Yep.
And obviously that moment was, I mean, it was probably louder and there was more mayhem, but
Football,
But
you know,
frankly,
bigger game, yeah.
that I have not seen. I mean, it was easily the loudest moment in Bramlage, and I haven't felt that way at a sporting event than I since that blocked punt. It was like, I mean, I felt like someone had just smashed my ears, and there was like I was seeing. It was like my eyes saw a flash of light. It was bizarre. It was that loud.
So I want to get Nelson's opinion because we sat by each other in that stadium as students at K-State when they blocked that punt against Oklahoma. And I've said forever, I'll never hear a louder moment than that, or I'll never be more excited at a K-State game than that because of what you said.
I mean,
the,
it was
the anger and
unbelievable.
the hate and the frustration
Unbelievable.
of being down 24 to them and coming back. I mean, like, so I will still say it wasn't louder.
I mean, it was the
But
second
it's
loudest.
competitive.
It was.
Good comparison.
And
I haven't felt that way since that moment. Like,
And I will say, yeah, like that's the same. Well, there's more people there. That was the largest crowd they'll ever have at a game at K-State football. I think it's still never been broken. Yeah. So I mean, more. Yeah, I think it was most. I think it was like almost 50.
I thought it was the Nebraska game.
I don't think it. I could look it up. I don't think it was because there was that snow but maybe it was. Maybe it was Nebraska. It
doesn't
I think
matter. It doesn't matter.
I think at 53,811 was the largest crowd. But yeah, and like Nat says, Bramlage had 12,000 there. But I will give you this credit too, and it helps your argument. My ears did ring after that.
It
like,
was.
I'm not kidding. When I
mean,
put
it
it
was
on Twitter on our site, my ears were ringing after the Cardi dunk.
All right,
and
so
I don't think they were after the block punt in Oklahoma against Oklahoma.
for the sake of this argument, and I already forgot the question. How is he going to be remembered?
Yeah,
I mean, he's got 2 full
For that
years
dunk,
left. It's
apparently.
kind of a silly question when you're asking about Cartier Jada, but he's probably the most athletic player on this team. I think he has a very high ceiling, and we haven't even seen Cardi get to his to his potential. I mean, and he's a sophomore with, honestly, until the KU game and maybe what was the game?
The KU game with Lawrence last year, is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about this year.
He struggled. He played well against Baylor.
Game,
even A&M, he played okay in the second half. But no one played well. No, you're right.
Baylor.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so the Baylor game was right after the KU game. Until those 2 games, I mean, honestly, he wasn't having the best year.
No.
And he's still, and everyone's already, like, all in on Cardi.
Oh.
So, come on. I mean, he's got, I'm bought. All right. With your definition of bought in, I am bought in on Cardi right now. I've been bought in on Cardi since day one. I've always been a Cardi guy.
Yes,
frankly,
I love this passion from you.
I think that Cardi is going to be remembered.
Well, and I was on.
I mean, both of these guys are.
Show, I said that too.
You're going to be remembered very highly.
He's been good, but
frankly, I mean, Cardi's unbelievably athletic. He's going to have an excellent career at K-State. So I'm very curious to see who the last guy is.
Well, I think I'm not going to ask it to you, not because you're not killing it, because you are, but like this is just a lot of projecting. And if I ask you Mike McGurl, he's the next one, you're going to say the same thing you just said.
Here's what I want to ask you.
Okay. Yeah.
Same question. McCall Mayween.
I think he'll be underappreciated. I mean, that's the thing. I think he'll be a guy that you're going to look back at some big games that K-State won, like Texas or whatever, and in the future and say they could not have won that game without him. I think they're going to – I think next year, this might be crazy, and I could be proven totally wrong. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a borderline, like, honorable mention, all Big 12 type player. I think he's going to take a bigger jump than people think. I don't think he has the ceiling that Cardi does or even Mike does or X does. But I think I wouldn't be shocked if next year he averages, 11 and 8 and is a pretty darn good Big 12 player.
Hey, Rob has an opinion on that.
Okay, get Rob in here then. Give him a mic.
I couldn't agree more. I think McCall is criminally underappreciated.
I think he's left-handed and doesn't know it. But I mean, I think if he figures that out, he's going to be even better. But.
Yeah, and it gets pointed out a lot on the message boards and on Twitter that Mayween is in his strength.
Right.
And people swatting the ball out of his hands. When I watched the game this week.
Yep. The Baylor game, maybe?
No, just this week. Someone swatted the ball out of his hands. I'm like, squeeze the pill. I mean, his strength, he really needs to get stronger so he can rebound better.
Right.
And then again, he really did a good job this game, and you guys have brought it up on multiple discussions that he did a really good job of staying out of foul trouble.
Right.
And hedging correctly on the screens, and he did a great job on that. But his strength just is so frustrating. When people knock the ball out of his hands, I'm like, you are a giant dude.
That's what I was going to say, because it shouldn't be an issue for him.
To the ball.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
I think a good, or maybe not a good comparison from a fan perception standpoint, because Jamar Samuels is probably thought of more highly at this point than Mac is, but from my perspective, both are similar in that I always wanted more out of Jamar. I thought there was more in him. His talent, his skill level was a lot higher than what, and we saw flashes of it at certain times, but he wasn't always consistent with it. And I think Mac is kind of in that same ballpark. And
what Rob said is so right, because I'm a pretty big Mac guy too. Like, I will defend him and almost any argument. But he's right. I mean, like, there's no reason McCall Wayne should have the ball. But it almost varies from game to game. You'll see times when you think, well, man, that looked easy. When he's snaring boards with one hand or two hands and holding it strong or throwing it down instead of going up soft. And I think for him, part of it is just deciding and being confident and comfortable enough to be strong with the ball, because he should physically be able to, like you said. He's just not all the time. And it is a problem. But I think if he can change that, and it's a big if, but I think he can become a quality, high-level, all-big, honorable mention, all-Big 12 type player.
And I think it gets to a point where he gets a whole lot better than what we've seen him for most of this year, next year. But I think the immediate impact we see next year in the early games, that's going to be a little increase, and then it'll grow throughout the season. But the first thing we see, I think it's just going to be having Barry Brown and Dean Wade and those guys gone, just because I think it helps to have the mindset of, I'm one of the guys now, rather than McCall Mayween right now is, probably viewing himself as the fifth option on the team and doesn't always think what he's doing is necessarily important, or thinks, I don't need to have this killer mentality. I need to be looking to do this, or, hey, watch out, maybe one of these guys is coming in to help out with something. He just needs to have the killer instinct now, and I think that's something that would increase how good he's playing.
The next one was Mike McGurl. I'm not going to – I love the question. I think it's fascinating, but I think he's even harder than those two or three. Like, yeah, I think –
McGurl.
Think the world of him.
About McGurl.
But it would be all projecting on Mike McGurl right now, pretty much for me. So we've been on here for an hour and a half. I want to talk Iowa State for a second and then wrap this up. It's a big game, so I don't want to. You guys don't need to rush through your predictions or your descriptions. If you want to explain a lot about why, that's great, because a lot of people are listening to this, hopefully to hear about the K-State Iowa State game. But I'm going to go around. I want everyone to give me a pick and why. So again, make that as long as you want. Let's start with Flando and then go to Fan, and we'll just go around the table here. Flando, you'll be there, of course. K-State Iowa State. The Wildcats beat them by 1 in Ames. You saw that in person when Barry Brown scored late. Does K-State sweep Iowa State? Yes or no, and why?
Yes, they do. And this is the toughest game they have, or one of the toughest games they have left on this schedule, if not the toughest, because I think Iowa State is that good. Oh, it just got really quiet in here. That's embarrassing.
It did. You talk louder when it gets quiet.
But no, yeah, I think this Iowa State team is very talented. It's going to be a tight game and cause for this ruckus crowd to get super, super raucous. But I just think that K-State at home, they were able to do it against Iowa State in Hilton. And yeah, that team was down, and Iowa State has a chance to really make a statement and show why they can win this league by beating K-State in Manhattan. I just don't think they have really what it comes down to the coaching to get it done. I think what it's going to come down to is Bruce out-coaching Prohm, and that is going to be where K-State gets it done. I'm a player of the game. I'd take Barry Brown. This is one of those games where he leads this team in crunch time moments, goes to the bucket, hits a few big shots outside, and obviously plays the defense he's been playing for 4 years. So to me, this is a game where K-State gets the win. I'm going to say 61-58.
61-58. Cats win, the same score as the Kentucky game last year.
Whew.
So there you go. And Grant was not there. You were, he was not. That's what it was. The other Grant was. And a funny thing you said, we'll go to Fan. You can pass it to him now. I'm not going to bring you back on. Promised you that. Was Prohm basically said that today. And it was probably some coach speak, but what you saw about the coaching not being there, I think he almost said the most accountable, honest way. He's like, I got out-coached in that game, and he beat me down the stretch. And Bruce did. So it's just interesting that you said that. And again, it's probably coach speak. He's probably just being accountable for his team, but I think there's some truth to it too. So, Fan, talk us through what's happening against the Cyclones on Saturday.
Well, number one, Iowa State's the worst rebounding team in the league.
The worst.
And it's not even close. Texas Tech is next worst. And really, that's the reason we won the game at Ames. If you look at all the numbers, we rebounded over a third of our missed shots. Our differential was quite a bit in how much we out-rebounded them. They shot better than us. Turnovers were about even. Free throw rate was about even. So, to me, we already have a big advantage coming into the game as far as that goes. We're shooting a lot better, and we have Dean back at full strength.
That's true.
That really changed the game from what could have been a blowout, really, in Ames, to the second half when Iowa State kind of decided Dean Wade's not going to shoot the ball, so we can just play off of the paint and basically keep an extra guy in the paint. And that changed the nature of the game, and really our offense sucked in the second half against them, which is the only reason they really got back in the game, because our defense was great against them. That was one of their worst offensive games of the year still.
Yeah, they get 58 in that game. Yeah. So Flando hasn't scored in 58 both times. Listen to that.
So when I go back to those two things, we're actually a better three-point shooting team than them in Big 12 play.
Isn't that crazy to think about?
Shooting the ball well lately. So
Grant thinks you made it up.
I really think it is really true.
If he says it, it's true.
So I look at those two things. I would watch turnovers a little bit. I mean, Iowa State's really good at protecting the ball. That's one of our strengths on defense. It ended up pretty even in Ames. So, but I think we win the rebounding battle. I think we outshoot them by at least a little bit, and I think it ends up being a pretty comfortable win for K-State. I think I picked, let me see, I picked 72-65 on the boards. For my player of the game, I'm going to go with Dean. He destroyed Iowa State twice last year, and he didn't play very well against them in his first game back. So I think he's going to be hungry, and I could see one of those 20-plus point games from Dean this time out.
I totally somehow spaced on the idea that K-State beat them because I know Dean played, and I kind of forget that he had 9 boards, and he played hard, but man, he was dead tired every time he went to the sidelines. He wasn't Dean Wade in that game, and K-State still won. So
had a crucial bucket.
He did. And oh man, that was a fun story. I think I've told this, maybe I haven't, but we had the media seating in Iowa State's the best because you're basically on your team's bench that you're covering. And I remember when the backup big for Iowa State, not Lard, the other, it doesn't matter. No, they had a small freshman they were playing on him. And I remember they threw it down to Dean when Dean's only basket. And I think it was Patrick Muldoon got up on the bench and screamed, "You have a baby guarding you," as loud as you could. And you could hear it. You could hear it as clear as day. And then when Dean put his shoulder down and turned and scored, and Prom immediately pulled that kid off the floor.
George Condit.
That's who it was, Condit. And long player, good athlete, that kind of stuff.
6'10", yeah.
You have a baby.
But
guarding
Muldoon
you.
just screamed, "You have a baby guarding you." And Dean scored on him, and Prom took him out and called a timeout and didn't put him back in the rest of the game. And that was another topic. I want to get to Nats here in a second. So Nats, we saw a big K-State home win over Iowa State. We were in the K-State student section as adults. Were we married at that time? Probably. As married adults, we were there. We were at the game in the student section when a one dude stole the inbounds play from Iowa State and dunked it in to beat them. That was an exciting moment. Is it going to be another fun moment in Bramlage, or is it heartbreak with the clones?
Another fun moment. I don't like following fan to give my analysis, especially me. So this is gonna sound extra dumbed down. But I was gonna say yes. Yes, the Cats. I think Bramlage will be rocking Saturday. Everybody's hyped up with this team. I was gonna say 72-68. And I think with Weber, we've seen since Iowa. I feel like that was so long ago. Now we've seen a lot more coaching surprises from him, especially against Texas. There were some things that we saw that were a little more surprising and different than we've seen so far. So I think that he's going to bring something different, and we're going to be rocking Bramlage, and I think the Cats are going to win pretty easily.
It's interesting. We're starting to get like a composite score. We've got 72. I think you said 72. Is that right? Flanders was 61, but we got 68. We're going to get to a composite score. We're going to order here because Nelson had to pee, went to the bathroom, so now it's going to change. I'll go fast. I think K-State will win. I think, again, I'm going to say what Nat said. Fallen fan, you just want to copy his pretty much. I think Iowa State's pretty good. I think it'll be competitive, but I don't think it's going to be a game where in the last 3 minutes you're like, who's going to win? I think you're going to think at that point you've known K-State's going to win the game. I'm just going to steal everything he said. It'll be Dean Wade because of all the reasons he said. He's due to do it for K-State, so ditto for fan for me. K-State wins. Exact same score, 72-65. Put me down for that. Grant, what do you got?
I'm bought in, baby.
That's what you do, Nat. You just say what he said as your own, and you think you're smarter. Yeah, but yeah. Oh, you're bought in now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I have the Cats. I was thinking, I think it's very funny, like, when we're like, give me a score prediction.
I know. It is kind of like an old media thing,
65.
right?
That's
you
like
make a great point.
It's a very funny
now
thing.
I never want to do it again.
The score prediction.
You're so right.
Was
you're
made
so
to
right.
fill time on an hour radio show.
Without doing it, and they made me give a score.
It is
I wish
very
you had not
funny.
brought that up because now I never want to do it again.
I'll humble brag and say I was 1 point off at the Texas game. So.
Well,
what did I
it
nail?
too.
Oh, KU, I said 71-65. And it was 71-64, something like that. I think I was 1 point off in KU, so it means something.
I said 69-65, so that's not terrible, but it
it's
is
wrong.
funny. Just
Not
like,
right.
Just guessing the score of a basketball game
It does
is
seem like
very
a stupid thing to do.
asinine, but I'm gonna do it. And the Cats have reached 70 points 4 straight games. We're rolling, baby, and it's gonna be. You know what it's gonna be? We're gonna hit 75
In the first
70
half.
in the first 5 minutes.
First 5 minutes.
Cats hit 75. I think our defense is going to be stifling. 75 to what?
42.
I'll let you pick. Okay.
62. You said stifling. You said stifling.
That would be a hell of a game.
You said stifling. They held them to 58 the first time in Ames.
I was bought in on 42.
75-42. Grant takes K-State over Iowa.
Really
That's
showing
my
off
pick.
why score predictions.
Why they're
basketball are done.
I just feel like you have those moments in your life when someone says something and it's like an epiphany. I'm like, he's right. Why do we use score predictions?
No, I'm telling you, it was definitely something that was created to fill time on a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour
I'll never
radio
see him
show.
again. I'll never see him the same again.
I know. It really
So,
bothered me.
in the spirit of saving time, I'll make mine pretty quick because I think it's pretty clear. I'm taking K-State, Young Bucks. Shout out to Flando.
I don't care what the score is.
And then my reason for K-State winning has to do with what I said probably an hour and a half ago, in which I said the thing we learned most from the Baylor game was the fact that K-State showed up and said, we're the best team in this conference. They're playing with confidence. They know they're good, and they just know that they're going to go out and beat whoever's on the other side of the floor. It's what they're going to do this weekend. And you guys have all said Dean Wade. I think he has a nice game. but I think we're due to see a big one from Barry Brown again.
Oh, I thought
so I'm going with Barry Brown.
I was ready. I was
Yeah.
ready for you to say Mac Attack.
No, I can't do that.
A funny thing is Mason sits behind us on press row, and the way that it's situated, Mason basically could yell and cheer if he wanted it, and no one would notice it. Because it just sounds like it's coming from a fan, because the third row there, that kind of stuff. And so there was a game. What game was it? When I picked Mac to be player of the game. Texas Tech, I think, at home.
Yeah.
Every time Mac scored, Mason just screamed in my ear, Mac Attack. And I thought, as a fan, no, it's Mason, that kind of stuff.
But there were other times where the fans behind me
And
are
then there's the
yelling
backwards
things, and
thing,
you
and I
think
think
that
it's
it's
you.
me.
There's fans yelling things like, why is Mason yelling that word from press row?
Yeah.
And I turn around and Mason's arms are crossed and he's not even talking.
Higgins, you don't know what you're talking about. I actually really like John Higgins, so shout out to John.
Higgins is the biggest myth. That is the biggest of him being like a homer.
Right.
Bad ref is the biggest myth.
I mean, he might be one of the best. He is one of the best refs in college basketball. That's why
good.
you know his name. That's why you recognize him, because he's good, but he's just recognizable.
And because he's recognizable and he's a referee, the fans take it out on him. It's like, oh, Higgins is terrible.
Real quick,
he's the only one you know.
My score prediction for the game.
I don't
shout
care
out
about
to
it.
my man John Kurtz here in spirit. K-State 69, Iowa State 63.
Kurtz always does that. Hey, I will say Nats leaned in and said, Matt, it's for the gamblers. They need to know if they're going to cover or not. I'm like, that's actually true. But I was thinking even before she said that, like, we could just say cover or not. We don't know the line, so we have to pick a score. Grant,
I'm
that's
sorry,
why we have to do it.
It's serious
very
business,
silly.
guys. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah.
Trying to gather my thoughts.
That's what we need. Get it.
A few things. Iowa State is prone to taking bad shots. On the flip side, they have enough talent that they have guys who can make those bad shots. So that's probably the most scary thing to me about this game. On the other side of the floor, I do think Dean Wade is due for a big game. While Iowa State is better defensively, definitely this year, I do think they struggle in transition defense. So I like K-State to be able to push the ball, get Dean Wade early in possessions, pick and pop, or get him in the mid-post early in possessions. And I do think, in all seriousness, another key offensively will be Mac. Jacobson is not a bad defender.
Hey, I'm listening now.
But he does not have near the length of Baylor or Texas, and he doesn't have elite athleticism. So if we get good Mac, Jacobson is certainly a guy that Mac could have a good day against. So I will take Cats 69 as well. Iowa State 64. You were way off.
How can you pick them to only score 6? They've scored 73 straight. They're definitely getting
We're due for an off game.
4 straight?
4 straight.
Well, I didn't even know. Yeah. Nelson, this felt like a business trip for you, man. Rolling in here all serious about this. No fun zone. You got that out. So I appreciate that. I want to thank Rob for coming here from Louisville. What section will we be sitting at? Do you know what section you're sitting at the game right now, Keith? Do you know what section? 16. So there will be multiple times that, like, after a bad call, that I turn to look at section 16 and see what kind of reaction we're getting. Will you be crazy up there, or will you be kind of like mature?
There'll be very loud booing and insanity.
Good.
I mean, I yell at the TV at home and wherever I am, so yes,
you get a chance to do it in person.
We should have a booing contest. How about that?
Nelson has a great boo.
In the Twitter world, K-State fans like to make fun of the Iowa State fans for booing excessively. I'm sorry, I boo a lot. I'm bringing it. And shout out to Fan here. All of you all disrespected his stats and knowing the exact score, because I have seen him predict the exact score of KSU games based upon his statistical knowledge. And you invite the man to your podcast, and then you take a big giant dump on him.
Listen. The we thing should be right here.
Look, man, I'm not taking a dump on anyone.
This guy. I love y'all. I love picking scores. I love picking scores. Like, I'm all for it.
It's very fun, but I don't know. When Grant was picking it, I was like, this is very weird. It felt weird.
In the last 2 hours, I've come to understand why the Big 12 tournament doesn't matter, which changed my perception on that, and why picking scores is stupid. And
we do it every time.
I know, and I'm going to leave this podcast being a different person than I came into.
Now, one thing before things wrap up, and you're talking about things you learned. We talk about Rob. He came from Kentucky.
Right.
Places we've traveled from. I want to thank this man to my right now for coming from Pawnee, Indiana, Tom Haverford. Give it up for my man right here.
I don't get it.
I kind of get it.
What's the joke?
He sounds like Aziz Ansari.
Well, I get that. Okay. Yes, he sounds like if you said
played
Aziz,
Tom Haverford.
Gotcha.
You ever notice Grant sounds like Aziz? You ever notice that? We like Aziz.
It is Aziz.
You ever notice that?
It's Aziz.
Just say something about hotel luxury linens. Say hotel luxury linens
God,
for me.
I was wanting to work on. I don't know, man. Hotel luxury linens.
I've got to add this.
Uncomfortable how good that
I've got to add
was.
this. My son who is here says, "You sound like Ben Shapiro."
Oh, that sucks. I hate that. I can do it. I can do a Ben Shapiro though.
Was perfect. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 8 seconds to get ready for this. I'm going to need you to end this by saying, tell your friends in the Aziz voice. So take some time while I say thanks to Chris Nelson. Appreciate Mason Voth. I appreciate Grant KSU and his brother KSU fan. Grant Flanders, Rob, Keith, Rudy, Teacher was here. They drove from Topeka. Nats, the Tallgrass Tap House, the greatest sponsor of all sponsors. Close second would be Harry's and Bourbon and Baker in that sponsor battle. They're all fantastic. Come out here. They're great to us tonight on Valentine's. They probably turned away some reservations to let us take up their spaces and not buy much food. So thanks to them. That's it. We end the show by saying...
Oh, my gosh. I don't know, man. I don't know. This is too much pressure. Tell your friends.